Welcome to another edition of the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm Donald Grodoff, family coach with FamilyOCD.com and FocusedHealthyFamily.com. In the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast series, I delve into the hidden characteristics of OCD, anxiety, and anxiety disorders, the things that most people don't see, that are behind closed doors and shut within the mind about anxiety. My goal with these podcasts is to bring about awareness of obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. Understand that I am not a doctor, therapist, or counselor, and the content, information, resources, and ideas that are talked about and brought up here in these podcasts are things that I have used, discovered, or have been recommended to me, and I always recommend to seek additional professional help in finding solutions for yourself. Thank you for listening and enjoy the podcast. This podcast was recorded August 3rd, 2018. This is podcast number 23, Conditional Happiness and Hidden Butt Syndrome. Now, for those of you, of course, listening to a podcast, I want to make sure you understand that this is the butt is B-U-T, not B-U-T-T. And we're going to talk about what that means in just a minute. But I want to talk about, what we think. I call it the if-then conditional happiness. So we think things like, when my conditions improve, or when my job eases up, if the house is clean, if, my husband, my partner, my daughter, my son, my friend, my coworker would just be this, if my car was just so clean, or when I get a raise, and then we go into the then. So there's this if my condition improves, if the house is clean enough, if my husband or whatever, we go into then I'll be happy, or then I'll be successful, or then I'll have what I want. It's conditional. It makes our happiness conditional on something else or somebody else doing something. And that's not a good preface, because does that mean we just are never going to be happy? And I've run into this many times with clients as I'm working with them. I have somebody right now I'm working with that has to have the house perfectly clean to feel good, to feel comfortable, to feel relaxed. And I always like the idea that was presented to me some years ago, and I'm trying to remember who actually came up with it. But it's the idea that true peace is found in chaos. If you can find peace in the most chaotic moment, that's when you really receive or reach the idea of peace. So I think we have to change the paradigm of happiness. That we have to be happy first, and then the house can be clean. Because then it can be clean no matter what, or it can be clean at whatever level we want, And I think when we look at the law of attraction, the idea what we put out is what we get back. If we could put out the idea of being happy and just be happy, we can attract more happiness. We can attract those things we truly want. We might think a lot of times we look at things like I want to have $1 million, or I want to create a happy life. I want to get a car. I want this certain car. I want to, in our mind, we think kind of on a spiritual sense of how we create this. So let's create, I'm going to create $1 million, or I'm going to create this car I want, or the perfect mate, the perfect partner, wife, whatever. So we have the spiritual, and this is one thing I kind of um, struggle with even myself. I'm really trying to work on this because what's I call the hidden but. I want $1 million, but I don't have it. And one of this is one of the philosophies that Esther Hicks of Abraham Hicks uh, really put to me and kind of made me understand is that one of the problems, it's very true, what you focus towards is what you create. What you focus towards is how you move, how you go towards things. And so we want to focus on, you know, making $1 million maybe, or having the right partner or whatever. The tough part is we're working or focusing on what I call the hidden but, or the hidden other side of that. So, we may be thinking I'm creating success, but I'm a failure. But, or we are reminded of when we failed before, or, you know, or, but I don't have enough money now, or, but I need something to be successful. I need this to happen, or that conditional factor plays into the but. But I don't, but I don't have it because I need this first. Um, or, but I can't do it. I'm not good enough to do it. Or I'm not even sure if I can do it, uh, or even worse, I'm not worth it. So we come up and we bring these statements up. I am creating success. And we may not say the second part of it, but in our mind we go through the but. And I find that's why start calling it the hidden but syndrome, because I find it in so many people as they say they put out there what they want to create, but they have that hidden message that sometimes can be deep down inside of them that they don't even realize is there, that is creating the downside of it. And then the mind turns towards the focus of the negative, the focus of the what's after the but, instead of really focusing and creating in that space of what you truly desire. So we say one thing looking towards the future, but turn and go back to could be even to the present time. Well, I just don't have that money. Um, and what I've always found is, that the but, the but, negates whatever came before it. Like saying, I love you, but I always go, really? Do you really love me? Or why would you put a but in there? Because that adds a condition to it. It's either, you haven't done something I need you to do so that I can love you, or you're not up to the specs of what I need to, the standards I've set. And what's really interesting, one is that, in that statement, I love you, but, or with any but, it's not just the thing before it that's lost, but also happiness and contentment and less anxiety. To me, that but statement is an anxiety driver too. Because on top of, like I say, you lose whatever is before the but, you negate it, but you're also losing other things that are tied into that. You know, you're tied in, I want a better job. Well, but I don't have the skills, or but I don't whatever. You're not just losing the possibility of creating that job, you're losing creating the salary that goes around it. You're creating the happiness of being in something maybe that's a passion of yours. So there's so much more that you lose with that but statement. And many times the conditions that are set in that but statement are ones that are almost impossible to match or meet. We set a bar so high sometimes for our partner or for ourselves that it makes it impossible. It's almost like that, like in perfection. It's almost impossible to meet. And many times the conditions that we've set or the standards that we set that but statement brings out are conditions that are hidden, are unspoken. Read my mind and know what I'm thinking about you. You know, Uh, I know even in my own marriage that can be a problem. I think we both do it. I think all couples tend to do that. They don't explicitly talk about what they need, but expect you to read the mind and know what it is you need. And so it becomes an impossibility to deal with. And also, many times these conditions that we set for others are higher than what we can even meet ourselves. So we set standards that we can't even reach. They're too far up for even us to be able to reach. You know, in working with clients, I talk about some words that and thoughts that I ask them to try to first off become aware of their saying it, but also work slowly but surely to weed them out. And some of them, just to give you some of them, one of them is always. Because to me, always is not true. When it comes to like in an argument, more than likely, I'd say 99% of the time that always is not true. You always yell at me. You always do this or that. Well, I always say 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year is that person yelling at you that whole time? Is he doing that thing that 24/7, 365? No. You know, they do it frequently, you know, or they do it in your eyes a lot more than you'd like them to do, but always just and what I believe is and the other word is never. It kind of falls in the same realm. You never do this. You never remember to do. Not true. And but what it does in our minds is it sets up a pattern of believing that it is always true or they never do. And it gets locked in so even if they do it or don't do it, the mind still sees it as the opposite. And of course, I already talked about the word but. I think, again, because it negates any previous statement. I like you, but you you should do this, but and of course I just used another word in there that I talk about should. But the word but, like I said, is that hidden but syndrome, and it is a tough thing that drives anxiety. And like I just meant, I also talk about the word should. You know, oh, I should have done that. You know, I should. Well, to me, it's got so much guilt built into it because it's like looking back at something you did, which may have, at the time may have been done with your best knowledge or done to the best of your ability, but you're now looking back at it and say, oh, you didn't do it right. It's just almost putting like stupid to it or whatever, but it's putting a lot of guilt on past. And it's not necessary. So I always tell people stop shoulding all over yourself, And we talk about when I'm working with a client, I talk about the arm length awareness. And that means if you can picture this, put your arm out with your hand, your palm of your hand facing up, and slowly curl your hands in slightly so that you almost make a cup out of out of the palm of your hand. But it's already stretched way out away from you, straight in front of you. That's what I call the awareness point. When we start catching these things, the buts, the shoulds, the nevers, these statements, these actions that we do that we don't like, that are not serving us, we catch them out here, way out here at the end of our arm. That's what I call awareness. That's the first step in getting past these kind of things, these statements, these words that are negative, that are conditional, that are really drive our anxiety, drive our arguments, all of that. We catch it out there at the end of our arm and we say, oh, there it is. I said that should again. I just negated him, or I just yelled at my son, or my, you know, and I really don't like doing that. And here's the big point of that. You catch it out there at the awareness point at the end of the arm, and you don't beat yourself up about it. Because what happens is you go, oh, I shouldn't. There you go, should. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I should. No, no. That you're not helping yourself by beating yourself up for doing it. You got to congratulate yourself for catching it. Oh, I said that should statement again. Or I got on my son and yelled at him again. Or whatever the action is that you're really trying to stop. You're now catching it, becoming aware of it, to where you now can start working on changing it and really start pulling that hand, cupped hand, in closer and closer till it's not coming out of the mouth, or it's not, the action is not happening. And it's even going further to when it's not even being a thought. That's what we work on, is trying to pull back on that, catch it so much sooner, and stop it. But it takes that kind of action. You can't do it in one fell swoop. You can't say, I'm just going to stop doing that, because it doesn't really work that way. It takes some methodical practice of not doing it to really stop it. So that's why I was telling, this is a process, a building process. One of the things Esther Hicks talks about is you can't jump from, I use the example, and I've used this in podcasts before, so I apologize for repeating here, but it's like the idea of somebody's lividly mad. I mean, ready to kill somebody almost, that kind of anger. Well, you can't go from that kind of anger to joyously happy in one felled swoop, one giant leap. Maybe there's somebody out there that can do that. I don't really believe it's really possible, because it's just too big of a leap for the mind to take. It's going to shut it down. So you have to take steps towards it. And they're not always what I would call, if you looked at each step, they may not look real positive, because you may go from lividly angry to just angry. And then the next step might be to frustrated. So if you looked at that anger, going from livid to the angry step, that angry step, if you looked at it out of context, it would say, "Oh, that's not positive. I don't want to go that." But no, it's going in a positive direction towards where you want to get to. So it's working towards getting towards the joyous. The next step might be frustration. The next one might just be a neutral place. And you just build slowly to the point where in that same situation, you're more joyous, or something like that. That's just an example, but it's slowly getting to the place you want, because it's too hard to jump. Plus, that is a journey, that is a process, just like life. Going from the livid, angry to the joyous is a journey to get there. And you learn so much along that journey that you don't want to skip the journey. I recently was talking with my mentor. I say recently, it was probably about a year or so ago. And we were talking about my situation. And, I've, as you probably know, my story has been in a lot of turmoil over the last 5 or 6 years with my daughter's anxiety and all the things we've gone through around that and my heart attack, etc. And I was just kind of going, oh, I just wish it could be back to those days before the OCD stuff happened, when we were a pretty happy family, and how that changed so much. And she said, why would you want to lose all of that? Yeah, it would be fun to lose the painful parts, but you also have learned so much in that journey. I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for that journey I went through. So it made me think about, yeah, you don't really want to go back and lose all that content of that journey. So I guess that's kind of my point here, is working on these conditional things, these statements, these words, to stop them, to help stop anxiety, because they're based on, that's anxiety triggers that we want to get past. And so to me, the best way is to work on being aware of it, and through that awareness, not beating yourself up, and finding ways to be able to change your language, change your actions, so they're not anxiety drivers, so there's not conditions to them, that there's not a lot of but to it. So that's my thought for this podcast, and I hope it's helped you out. I hope you can think about that, the possibilities of changing the actions and the words and the thoughts that you do that can help cut down anxiety, that can help cut down the stress and the thoughts and all of that. So, and if I can help you in that, you know that I can. That's what I do. So I hope that this has helped, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and take care. That concludes this podcast. Please leave me a comment or question below. That gives me good direction where to go on future podcasts. I would love to hear your invisible wheelchair stories if you're willing to share it. If you would, go to invisiblewheelchair.com and click on Tell Your Story. I want to remind you that OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is treatable, and I can help you get past OCD. So if you have heard this podcast and others, and you feel like you need further assistance and would like to spend some time with me working through any issues you have, then feel free to book a session at focusedhealthyfamily.com or familyocd.com, or you can call me at 704-562-1630. I also offer $85 off initial discovery session if you mention that you heard it on this podcast. Finally, don't forget that there is a tapping recording that coincides with this podcast you may want to take advantage of. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast and will join me for the next one. Remember to keep tapping, talking, and transcending your life to new heights. Thank you, and have a great day.